Is the war in Ukraine about to go to an entirely new level? Michael Snyder reports. If Russia intends to make a major move to win the war in Ukraine, it needs to do it very soon. As you will see below, representatives from over 50 different nations will gather this week for a historic meeting in Ramstein, Germany. The goal of that meeting will be to implement a plan to absolutely flood Ukraine with tanks and missile systems in an attempt to turn the tide of the war. At the moment, the Russians have regained the initiative and the Ukrainians are steadily losing territory in eastern Ukraine. The Ukrainians are hoping to buy enough time for the next massive influx of military aid to arrive because it could potentially change everything. Most of you have probably not heard about the meeting that will be held in Ramstein, Germany, Friday. That's tomorrow. The following originally comes from the Wall Street Journal. Representatives of more than 50 countries supporting Ukraine are set to gather in Ramstein, Germany to discuss provisions for Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine, and pledge fresh supplies later this month. The US-led assembly, known as the Contact Group, includes all countries in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, and allies, including Japan, South Korea, and Australia, offering lethal and non-lethal aid. Ukraine is expected to receive Patriot missile systems, which Ukrainian officials say would hobble Russia's missile attacks that have wreaked havoc on Ukraine's civilian and critical infrastructure. Some Western officials also said that the first ever shipment of Western-made main battle tanks could also be announced on Friday at the Friday meeting in Ramstein. The only way that the Russians will be able to stop all of this equipment from getting to Ukraine would be to launch an enormous new invasion from the north that completely cuts off the flow of aid from Western powers. Russia has been moving troops and equipment into Belarus for months. We know that the border of Belarus is just above Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine. So they've been moving troops and equipment into Belarus, which is Russia's ally, of course, for months, and many believe that such an offensive will soon happen. And it's interesting to note that Russia and Belarus are just initiated a series of Air Force exercises on Monday. Russia and its ally Belarus launched a series of Air Force drills, exercises on Monday along the border with Ukraine in an effort to boost cooperation ahead of what Ukrainian officials and military analysts believe could be a fresh effort by Moscow in the coming months to retake battlefield momentum. Throughout history, military exercises have often been used as a cover for major military operations, but that does not mean that the Russians will pull the trigger in this case. Perhaps the Russians are just bluffing and are simply trying to hold a large number of Ukrainian forces along the northern border as the main push happens in the east. At this point, we just don't know. But many analysts in the Western world do believe that the Russians will launch some kind of new offensive in the coming months. Quote, the Kremlin is likely preparing to conduct a decisive strategic action in the next 6 months intended to regain the initiative, end quote, said a note from the study of the Institute for the Study of War, a US-based think tank that publishes daily reports on the war in Ukraine. Actually, I think that if the Russians are going to make a move, it would happen soon. When the mud returns in the spring, it will be much more challenging for Russian tanks to move around efficiently. So if a major offensive is going to take place, it will almost certainly be conducted within the next several weeks. The ground is frozen now. Meanwhile, Russian television continues to be filled with talk of nuclear war. One of Vladimir Putin's allies has claimed World War III has already started, as he called for Russia to launch a nuclear missile strike on Britain, France, and Poland. TV propagandist Vladimir Solovyov told Russians that Moscow should target the West and disrupt NATO countries from sending supplies to Ukraine. You don't hear this sort of talk on television here in the United States. In fact, at this point, most Americans still believe that the risk of nuclear war is extremely low. But they see things very, very differently inside Russia. These remarks by Solovyov were in response to reports that NATO powers are getting ready to ship large numbers of tanks and armored vehicles to Ukraine. It comes as Britain is poised to supply Challenger 2 main battle tanks to Kiev in the first such move of war. France is shipping French AMX-10 reconnaissance vehicles. Germany is sending 40 Marder infantry fighting vehicles. And the US is promising 50 M2 Bradley fighting vehicles. Both sides just continue to escalate matters, and that has brought us dangerously close to nuclear conflict. Earlier this month, Dmitry Medvedev made headlines all over the globe when he, quote, threatened the United States of America with hypersonic cruise missiles, end quote. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev threatened the United States of America with hypersonic cruise missiles and compared the American government's policies to that of Nazis in a Thursday Telegram post in response to a U.S. Embassy appeal to Russian citizens for peace. Quote, the main gift of the new year was the arsenal of Zircon missiles that went yesterday to the shores of NATO countries, end quote, said Medvedev, an ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, who currently serves as deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council. The nuclear warhead-capable Zircon missiles were reported by Reuters Wednesday to have been placed in the frigate Admiral Gorshkov to be deployed to the Indian and the Atlantic Oceans. By the way, we have absolutely no way to defend against those hypersonic cruise missiles. If the Russians launch them, they will hit their targets. If our leaders were saying they would be trying to find a peaceful way out of this mess while there's still an opportunity to do so. Sadly, that window is rapidly closing. If the Russians launch another massive invasion of Ukraine from the north, there will be no going back. Both sides will just keep escalating the conflict until someone crosses the line, a line that will never be able to be uncrossed. On Russian television, they were already talking about the inevitability of a nuclear conflict. Unfortunately, most Americans don't even realize that our leaders have us on the brink of the unthinkable. Hopefully, people will start to wake up before it's too late, because the clock is ticking. It's finally here. Michael's new book entitled End Times is now available in paperback and for Kindle on Amazon. About the author, my name is Michael, and this is written by Michael Schneider. And my brand new book entitled End Times is now available on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 6 other books that are available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, Living a Life That Really Matters, Commissions Earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing. And one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I have published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the Most Important News. And the articles that I publish on those sites are republished by dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to replenish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making any legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media on Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely a great help. These are such troubled times, and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge that you invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. This is by the Economic Collapse blog, Michael Schneider. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box